Hi everyone. So today you guys are going to be taking your photos for the actual thing that you are going to be drawing. So a brief review, we're doing a project with graphite and we are going to be inspired by Jim Dine, who uses regular everyday objects to create his artwork. And so in class, we went over all of these different individual kind of like tips and tricks for a good setup for your actual photo, a good composition for your photo. And now we're going to go through specifically when you take the picture, how to make sure that you have that set up to look good and make sure that it's going to be a thing that you can actually use for your projects and that we're going to actually like it as a project. So I'm just going to go through and review. I think that there's only a couple of these, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal. And then the very last thing on the list is just going to be a brief reminder about how to grid your artwork. Now, on Friday, you will be watching a whole entire separate grid video. So if you missed this demo or if this demo was skipped in your class, then here's a small little run through of how it would work as well. I'm going to go ahead and hit present on here. And then this button. Okay. So the very first thing about taking photos of an object, what you need to know is these need to be any kind of household object that you have. Make sure it's school appropriate. And then when you're taking them, we're going to be practicing this idea of cropping them in really, really close. So that way we can get more detail in on the actual object. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to take a picture of anything that doesn't have lots of curves and edges to it. So anything like extremely plain and boring. And you also want to be careful to make sure that the pictures that you're choosing are the absolute strongest ones you could get. So we're going to go through some of these examples that are examples of bad photos. This one up here with these scissors, it's not one of the compositional tricks that we talked about. So it's compositionally quite weak in that it's only touching like two sides. It's not filling the frame. It's not centered. It's not asymmetrical. It's just all together kind of like haphazard, not really intentional, just a thing that someone did. So what might help make this stronger would be cropping it in, but unfortunately this object just doesn't really have a lot of value in it either because it's a black pair of scissors. We only have a little bit of a highlight and that's about it. So that's really not the best object to take a picture of. There's very little details. The next picture is of pliers. Now, this picture, there is more detail in pliers for sure, but because it's so pulled back, we're kind of losing the main details, and then there's lots of fuzzy things in it, and there's fingers in the picture. I don't want to see your fingers in the picture. These are about the objects, not our hands. So crop any of that out of the image and make sure that nothing is blurry in it. But even if you were to zoom into just like this one little area or just this one little area, there's not it's a ton of clarity there. So make sure that like when you do crop that it's still really clear. And then this one over here, another pair of scissors, but just again, compositionally, it's just not very strong. Unfortunately, there is a lot of here, I'm going to do this pointer. So unfortunately, there's a lot of like negative space down here at the bottom, and it doesn't fit into one of those compositional categories that we went over. So again, that video is on Canvas, or not video, PowerPoint is on Canvas, this one, for you to see if in reference in case you forget what those were from your notes. Here are some examples of good photos, strong photos. Now, this is a gray object instead of an object that has like almost entirely black on it, gray and shiny. So it's actually going to reflect lots of different values on it. We're getting some nice highlights, we're getting some nice shadows, and it also is casting shadows on the actual thing that it's sitting on. Notice it's sitting on a white object. So it's either a white table or a white sheet of paper. But when you take your photos, make sure that you're taking it on a background that is going to be easy for you to see. So it should be either white or like a really, really, really light gray. If it's not one of those two, then it's going to result in you doing more shading than you have to do. Then also with this, you can see that there's lots of details going on here. So we can see inside of each of these individually. We can match these up as well to the different compositions that we talked about. So this one really fills the frame nicely. It's almost touching the edges, but it's not quite. So it's really filling that frame. This one is very symmetrical, and it's actually symmetrical in two ways. So for those of you at home, that's kind of like a radial symmetry going on there. And then this last one is just regular symmetrical balance. Also, looks like it's nice and clear and crisp. We've got good details going on. These are good photos. Great photos are the ones that you can really see the detail. So to flip back, there is some blurriness going on here, and that's something that you really want to try to avoid. This is centered, but not all the way centered. So to really, 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 get the best photos possible, you're going to want to try to get as much detail in that photo as possible. So really, when you go in, don't just settle with the first couple ones you take. Look at them, see if they work, go back and take them again if they don't work. Make sure you get all of the detail involved in them. And then also, this is like a good example of like that strong diagonal coming down from this corkscrew. So these are compositionally strong as well. Nothing's blurry in any of these images. This one hits the rule of hitting three sides. This one fills the frame. So yes, great detail, lots of strong values because nothing in this is actually all the way black, and they're all compositionally strong. When you're taking your photos, one thing that will actually help you in looking to see what is going to be a strong composition is when you go on to your camera taking area app thing. You should see a spot on it that will allow you to add on these squares. So if you click on it, adds on the squares, and that will add on these little grids. Essentially, these are the same grids that you're going to be using to actually transfer your image when you're drawing them. So actually trying to make sure that you're lining things up with those lines is going to make it easier for you to draw in the long run. So again, household items, make sure that they are school appropriate and have lots of value. And then other thing, so this is a square photo. Notice we picked the square, so it's a square photo. When you hold down on your phone, it should pop up with a grid, but also the square photo. Don't take a picture just on a regular camera mode where it's literally the size of the screen, because that's going to be way too big. And if you push it and scrunch it down, then that's going to distort your image. So you want to be using the square option on your photo. And the last thing that you're going to do is you're going to turn this photo black and white. You do that by putting it on the mono setting when you go to edit your photo. Or if you have a different type of phone or different type of device, just make sure you turn it black and white. So again, here's some great strong photos. We're getting lots of detail, very little blurriness, and different compositions that are very strong. So here's another list of those compositional tricks. Here's another list of the things that make great photos, which is lots of value, lots of great detail, and compositionally strong. So those are those compositions. Okay, do not, I repeat, do not do this. These are AirPod case holders. They are white, yeah, but there's no value on them hardly at all. There's very little shading going on. So this is not a good object to take a picture of or anything remotely like this. Don't take a picture of your AirPods. They're just, not going to be the most detailed things, so they're not going to be the best things to draw. There's no range in value, no details, and also these photos individually are compositionally pretty weak. They're not fitting in with any of the things that we talked about previously. Also, they're on a wooden table. So don't forget, if you have a really detailed background, that means you have to shade that background. Don't do that. Make sure that you are taking a picture on a white sheet of paper. Okay. And then brief review about gridding. You can practice this drawing from reference gridding photos. This is how we're going to actually do it in class. Tomorrow, you will be asked to, wait, not tomorrow. We will do this in class, but you should have practiced this yesterday on Thursday, which is going to be how to grid. You'll use a ruler or a straight edge to cut your piece into multiple different sections, then do the same grid on the piece of paper that you want, and then you can draw where the lines are going to cross those individual grid lines. Okay, thank you guys so much. Please make sure that you send me an email if anything is confusing or not working for you, and I will see you all soon.